Hi everyone, welcome to 15 Minutes in the Forest. I'm Jennifer Gagnon with the Forest Landowner Education Program at Virginia Tech. And today I'm joining you from my farm in Snowville, which is in Montgomery County in Southwest Virginia. And my guest today is Austin Holloway. Austin is a Master of Science student in the Department of Forest Resources and Environmental Conservation, and he has an undergraduate degree in wildlife management. Today, Austin is going to be taking us around and showing us different signs that we can look for to figure out what types of wildlife we have on the property. So Austin, do you want to tell us a little bit about what kind of signs we're going to be looking for today?
Yeah, sure, Jen. Like things I'm going to be looking for. I'm looking for tracks. I'm looking for scat. I'm looking for anything that animals may have left behind that tells me they were there without me actually having to see the animal itself.
And that can tell us what kind of animals we're looking at?
That'll tell us species. Sometimes it can tell you a little more, other times it's a little less, but you'll at least have a general idea of what's on your property by these signs without actually having to see the animal.
Cool. All right, let's go.
Let's do it. One of the first things I'm seeing when I'm walking down through here is I'm starting to see where the bark is tore up on this young pine tree that we have here. As you can see, it goes all the way around. It's really frayed up, especially up here through the top, like I'm ripping shreds of bark off, as you can see here. And the first thing that tells me, we've got deer on the property. Now, again, that's very general. Not that just we have deer though, that this is specifically a male deer that's come through here and rubbed his antlers along this tree, either out of aggression because it's during the reproductive phase for white-tailed deer, or during that late summer period when they're trying to get rid of velvet off their antlers, they'll come through and rub stuff like this. So when you start seeing rubs like that, that's a great sign that you've got male white-tailed deer on your property. So if you notice here, we do got some deer poop coming up through here, and it's kind of oval shaped. That's what tells me this is more than likely deer instead of rabbit. Rabbit would be more round, whereas deer have this oval shape. So you got these individual pellets here that you see, and when they're individual like that and really solid, like if I poke on this, it's not really disintegrating any. But what this suggests to me is the diet of the deer that ate this is they're consuming a lot of hard mast right now, which consists of acorns and stuff like that may be on the property. If they were eating a lot of grass or like berries or something like that, like they would be in the summertime, it would be more clumped up and really soft, like huge clumps instead of these individual pellets. So that's one way that you can tell a difference in the diet of the animal that you're looking at, is depending on the shape. And deer's a really easy one to see that shift in diet by their scat. All right, so as we're walking down through here, I'm also looking around at what type of tree cover that I've got around here, because trees produce the types of food that animals like to eat. So when I start seeing oak trees like you've got over here, specifically northern red oak, I start looking for fruit on the ground. And we've actually got caps left all over the ground here. As you can see in multiple locations, there's just caps, remnants left over. And the one thing I start looking for to give me an idea, this cap is a perfect example here, is you see how there's a notch missing from the inside of this cap? If I flip it up, you can see that it's completely notched out over here. This suggests to me that we've got more white-tailed deer sign through here, because deer don't have thumbs like we do, so they can't pop the acorns out. So when they put them in their mouth, they typically bite down and break a side of the cap off when they're eating the fruit, which is just another telltale sign, along with tracks and scat, that we've got white-tailed deer on this property. I've got an obvious trail that's running down through here. Now I don't know what's made the trail yet because I haven't seen any tracks, so it could be anything. But when I get to this area right here where the ground is really tore up, and especially above this tore up area, I start seeing broken off limbs and stuff like this. This really suggests to me again that we've got another male white-tailed deer presence, and that's because we refer to this as a scrape. We talked about rubs earlier, but this bare area is where a mature white-tailed buck has come through and actually scraped with his hoofs, and more than likely peed in this too, kind of marking his territory. And the last thing they do with these scrapes, they start rubbing their antlers and their eyes and stuff to get their orbital gland scent on these branches, kind of marking for any other deer that comes through here, hey, this is my zone, or hey, I'm in the area type deal. That, coupled with this trail that I'm seeing here, really conveys to me that, hey, we've still got heavy deer presence in this area. We've got a really obvious game trail coming down through here. The reason we say it's really obvious, if you just look at how the ground's tore up here compared to this area over here, or even compared to this area right here, it's obvious that there's a lot of traffic coming down off this area. So, and with it being the soft mud that it is, I come over here to start looking, can I actually ID tracks? And you actually can. You come right here, you've got this 2 hoof print right here. and another one over here on this side where there's 2 hoof prints right here. And that starts suggesting to me again, white-tailed deer. But you may ask, Austin, how do we know that this is white-tailed deer and not some other hoofed animal that we have on our property? Well, in North America, you only have a couple of hoofed animals, and especially in Virginia. If you're out west, you've got a lot more hoofed animals than we have here in the eastern part of the US. But for us specifically in Virginia, the area we're at, I only know of a couple, and one of those is white-tailed deer. Feral hogs, if you're on the North Carolina, Virginia line, there's the possibility that you've got feral hogs starting to come across, which is another hoofed animal, or we'll call them ungulates, which just mean hoofed mammal. If you're in Southwest Virginia, you might see elk hoofs, which are very similar to this. However, elk hoofs are much larger than white-tailed deer hoofs are. If you're out towards the Chesapeake Bay area and out in there, we do have Sitka deer. However, they are much smaller than our typical whitetail, and so if you start seeing that smaller hoof print and you're in that specific area in Virginia, you could be dealing with Sitka deer instead of white-tailed deer. When you start seeing a lot of leaf litter, you can start finding sign in the leaf litter. And when I start seeing leaves turned upside down like we've got over here, I start getting really excited when I'm walking around properties like this. And a couple reasons I start getting excited, as you can see here, the leaves have been turned up from here, here, and even if you come over here, all over the place, you've got sign tore up. And basically all it is where animals come through here and rake just like that, digging for stuff in the ground. And more specifically, when you start seeing this in great abundance as we have around through here, that really starts suggesting me that we got wild turkeys on the property, which I know is really exciting for many landowners because turkeys are just one of the amazing animals that we have. That's my first assumption when I see scratching like this, that it's known as. And if you notice right here, we've got some more poop and some more scat right here. And what really suggests to me, not only is this poop in the area with all this turkey scratching that turkeys were here, but also this kind of tube shape that kind of hooks back on the end here, and it's got the white on it. That white on the end that you see really lets me know that this is a bird of some sort because of that uric acid that's in that poop. And the reason you see that there, a cool biology fact for you, is that birds can't process with their kidneys the same way that we do. And so they produce this white substance that's impartial, broke down of what they've been eating. And it actually comes out of that white colored uric acid that you see in the poop, really suggesting this is more than likely a bird. And with all this scratching, really puts the puzzle together for me that this is wild turkey. All right, so here we are, still walking down our river access trail here, and we happen to look down and I saw some scat down on the ground, otherwise known as poop. We call it whichever you want, whichever way sounds better to you. But the first thing I start looking at when I see this poop, I'm seeing little pieces of fur inside of this poop over here. And that's telling me that whatever's eating this is more than likely an omnivore or a carnivore at the least. And the other thing I start looking at on this poop or scat is I start looking at this tapered end. That really starts pointing me in the direction that this is probably a coyote, considering I know the types of animals we have around this area just in general. Bobcat would be more cat-like instead of dog-like, as you see here. All right, so coming down through here, and I look over and see this barbed wire fence right here. Now, barbed wire fence usually separates property boundaries, which this one does, but animals don't recognize property boundaries. They're crossing back and forth all the time. And typically when they cross back and forth and there's a barbed wire fence, they'll get fur snagged in the barbs that are on the wire, and that's exactly what we have happening here. As you can see here, I just picked a bundle of fur that is really coarse and black out of this fence that you see here. And considering how large this gap is in the fence, and the color of this fur and the texture, I'm gonna suggest that this is probably black bear fur that we've got coming through this fence, going back and forth between these two properties here. Now, some could say, and I can't really make this clarification, but it could be that this is also coyote with a really dark pelt as well. But my suggestion, and I'm gonna guess, is probably black bear considering the size of that gap, and it's probably been grabbed off the belly as the bear has went through this fence you see here. Cool fact about this, barbed wire fence do great for this, but this type of technique is also used in wildlife research, looking at population dynamics and gene structure of bears, because there is some DNA located in this hair that they can use to ID individual animals. So This has been used as a survey technique, although we're not using it for that. We're just looking to see what's here. That's just a fun fact about using this type of hare snare, as they're called. So when I start seeing rock faces like this that kind of create an overhang, and you can see the big difference here in the vegetation and stuff. You've got a lot of wet ground out here compared to how it's really dry and stuff under here. And that tells me an idea that animals could be looking for cover under there, meaning if they're spending a lot of time here, I'm probably gonna find some sign around these areas. First thing you do when I came up here, I found a pile of poop that we've got right here, a pile of scat. And I start looking at this, and this is actually pretty fresh because you can tell it's still a little bit kind of wet. So this is probably within the past 24 to 48 hours, considering we're at this face right here. And just the color, I'm not seeing tapered ends. I'm seeing some fur in here, but I'm also seeing a lot of fibrous stuff. So this is telling me we're probably dealing with an omnivore that you see here. And just the color and texture of this poo, I'm probably leaning towards striped skunk. Now, depending on a raccoon's diet, it may be raccoon too, but just the coloration and what this poop's comprised of, all of its diet, I'm probably gonna guess skunk. And considering that a skunk could very easily get up in here and hold up during the day until it comes out to feed, that would be a great educated guess that you see. And I start even looking farther down through here. Do I see any more sign? And actually, if you come right here, we even got some more poop right here that looks very similar to the poop that we just saw over there. This looks to be about the same. And I'm probably still gonna go. I'm gonna solidify my answer here. And I'm thinking this is skunk. I could be wrong as we're just making educated guesses, but I am thinking skunk. Yeah, so when I start seeing stumps like this or just turned up logs and we're looking around, I start looking for feeding sign on there, especially for squirrel. Squirrel really like propping up on these types of stumps and really sitting there and cutting into any acorns or any hickory nuts they may find. And actually, if you come over here, you can actually see some cutting sign that we've got here. Here's a shagbark hickory husk, but we also got some acorn husk in here where a squirrel has obviously been cutting. And how I'm thinking squirrel here is if you look on this hickory husk, you can see the two front teeth marks in here where this squirrel has actually broken into this husk to actually get the fruit out from inside of this husk. So this, along with this other feeding sign here and here, and actually he forgot one. He may come back and get that one later, we'll see. But this sign, and there's actually some more that I pulled off the top of this stump, are all what we would call cutting sign of where a squirrel sit here and just cut into the nuts to get the fleshy fruit out of the inside of these. Yes, as you can see, now we're down here by the river, and I really like these areas when you're looking for tracks by the river, typically because there's sandy soils beside of them, but not only that, is that they're most of the time moist sandy soils which hold an imprint better. And if you come over here and look, I can kind of show you what I mean by this. Over here you've got this wetter, darker sand, and over here you've got this much drier sand. If you start looking at tracks in this drier sand, when you push down in this, you can see that it kind of falls in on top of itself because there's no structure there to hold it. That makes it really hard to look at tracks and be able to ID it. Instead, if you come over here and look at this much wetter sand, when you really put something down there, the track really holds good. So when I'm looking at those tracks, kind of like the wet muddy area we were talking about earlier, wet sandy areas can be a really good place to find some good tracks if you want to see some. So we're down through here along this sandy beach area that I was just talking about, and I happen to look down and immediately I start seeing these little tiny itty bitty fingerprints that you see here. I'm pointing out 1, 2, 3, 4, and the fifth one is over here. Now that's really faint, but as you can see, that track doesn't come much past right here, and it's about that long. How long those toes are really suggests to me that this is probably a raccoon track, and just how short it was in itself. If we were looking at maybe a possum track or something, we'd get to see something that had thumbs, kind of like we do. If you've ever got the chance to see possums, and we may find some later. All right, so we're still in this sandy beach area down through here. I look down, and this track is very faint, so it may be a little difficult to see, but if you see, we've got the back pad of this foot right here, a toe here, a toe here, a toe here, and a toe there. And the first thing that I'm looking at is the general size of that. And it's generally a small animal from what it looks like, but the other thing that I immediately noticed is the lack of claws. The lack of claws being exposed up here really hint to me that this is probably a cat of some sort, and that size, it's probably a house cat or something that's running around down here by the river. So this is kind of a unique sign that we've got here, and it's one of those that you can't actually see unless you look really hard. It's more that you feel it. And as I'm walking around here, I'm feeling like I'm walking on hollow ground. Like the ground's there, but it's really spongy. And I'm really jumping around on this, and as you can see it moving up under my feet as I walk through here. This tells me that we've got moles tunneling through the ground here somewhere, especially all this tore up dirt that you see here where it's raised up. That's really pointing in the direction of mole for me, kind of creating tunnels, looking for food and stuff. So as you can see here, we've really got some destruction of those moles that I was just talking about. Really spongy ground here, but here, really big destruction. And this actually looks like something may have dug this up, and considering we've got dogs on the property here in Snowville, it's possible that they've dug up one of these moles that we're looking for over here. And actually, if you come over here, we actually do have an eastern mole right here. Scalopus aquaticus, and I say the Latin name for this animal. This is the animal creating all those tunnels, but I really want to point at these big forearms right here. When I say Scalopus aquaticus, it makes it seem like swimmer, and when these animals were first discovered, that's what they thought these were. They thought they belonged in the water because of these big forearms. They must be swimmers with these paddle-like feet. Well, in reality, they actually are swimmers, except they're just swimming underground.
Wow, so we found how many species in 15 minutes?
Yeah, so 15 minutes, let's count them up here. We found raccoon, we found skunk, we found bear or coyote hair, deer, coyote poop for sure, squirrel feeding sign, some more deer feeding sign, and then we also have got our mole tunnels up there, and also our specimen of a mole that the dog may or may not have gotten before our walk today.
And the house cat.
And don't forget our house cat that we found down here by the river as well.
So you can do the same thing on your property, and it's not even going to take up your whole day. Just a quick walk around.
A 15-minute walk, and you've already got a general idea of some species that's on your property, which gives you a good idea for the diversity that's there. And this is relatively easy and doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Yep,
that was really fun. So thank you for spending 15 minutes in the forest with us. Thank you for teaching us about wildlife sign. We really appreciate it. And be sure to join us in 2 weeks for another edition of 15 Minutes in the Forest. Have a great weekend.